Companies start cutting staff. Export markets riot over new tax policies. Cost of living rises faster than wages. Dad, are we still going on vacation this summer? And Daniel didn't know what to say. Not because he ran out of money, but because he had run out of hope that things might ever feel stable again. You see, the deepest disorientation doesn't always come when you lose your job or go bankrupt. It comes when everything you used to believe in suddenly feels untrustworthy. And what haunts me most is that Daniel wasn't alone. I saw his story reflected in so many others. Men who still looked strong on the outside, but were quietly crumbling within. Women who held their families together, yet could no longer care for themselves. Young people who laughed in public, but felt hollow inside, like houses with no light. We are living in an age where everyone is bracing. Bracing to appear okay. Bracing to hide their fear. Bracing just to survive another day. But the more we brace, the more we lose touch with ourselves. And at some point, we no longer know, am I actually living? Or just trying not to fall apart? I know, some people might roll their eyes and think, here we go again, another feel-good talk. It sounds nice, but life's reality is harsh. And you know what? You're allowed to think that. But if you're still here, still listening to this story, then maybe a small part of you is still trying to find your way back. Back to where? Not to a perfect past. Not to a bright future someone else promised. But back to the place inside you, where you once knew how to live lightly, steadily, without needing to prove anything to anyone. This video isn't about decoding the economy. It's not here to break down charts or analyze political speeches. I'm not going to tell you, inflation will go down soon. Don't worry. Or, trust the market. It always bounces back. Because honestly, I don't know that for sure. But here's what I do know. We can't wait for the world to calm down before we learn how to live in peace. In this video, I want to share what I've witnessed. Not from textbooks, but from real life. People who hit rock bottom financially. Families who lost all hope. Minds that shattered under the weight of crisis. And yet, somehow, they found a way through. Not with money, not with new opportunities, but through something far more lasting. A shift inside, a change in perspective, a new way of seeing and being. I don't have magic. All I have are lived stories. Ones I've seen, heard, and walked through with others. And I believe, more than any speech or statistic, a real story from a real soul has the power to heal. So if you've ever felt like Daniel, if you've ever found yourself alive, but unsure why you're still trying, if you've ever felt so tired you wanted to stop caring, then stay with me, just a little longer. Breathe with me, just one deep breath. And let's begin this journey together. Not a journey that takes you far, but one that quietly brings you back to where you've always belonged, with yourself. I used to think only reckless investors cared about the stock market. That only people who played big, who put hundreds of thousands into trades, would panic when the numbers turned red. I was wrong, completely wrong, because it's not really the numbers that scare us. It's the feeling of losing control over our own lives. It was a cold, gray afternoon in April. I had just finished a long therapy session. And then, my phone buzzed. A friend sent me a news headline. Recession is coming, markets in full panic. Below that, a sea of red graphs. Dow Jones plunging, Nasdaq sliding, oil, gold, the dollar, spinning wildly. I'm not a financial expert. I don't invest six figures. But still, my chest tightened. A familiar weight settled in my ribs. That quiet, creeping thought, what's happening to the world? I sat down, closed my eyes, and suddenly, I remembered a session from a few years ago. A middle-aged man walked into my office. His shirt was worn at the shoulders. His hands were clenched, eyes swollen from crying. He didn't talk about stocks or oil prices. He just said, I'm exhausted, Doc. I did everything right, studied hard, got a job, saved, invested, and still, I live in fear. I'm afraid I'll lose my job. Afraid I won't make enough. Afraid my kids won't have a future. I've heard versions of that same story hundreds of times. From delivery drivers, elementary school teachers, senior managers, different people, different jobs, but the same inner voice. I feel like I'm on a ship in the middle of a storm. And no one's at the wheel. That fear, in psychology, it has a name. We call it existential anxiety. It's not just about losing money. It's the deep, aching question beneath it all. If everything I've worked for can be taken away by a headline, then what does my life even mean? You see, economic turmoil doesn't just shrink your bank account. It shakes the very ground beneath your identity. Why? Because the human brain, especially a part called the amygdala, is wired to detect threats. Thousands of years ago, it helped our ancestors survive lions, famine, war. Today, there are no lions, but the amygdala doesn't know that. It still fires the alarm every time we hear words like, the government's losing control, jobs are vanishing, the economy is collapsing. Our brains are biased toward danger. It's called negativity bias. We focus more on bad news than good, because evolution taught us that ignoring a threat could be fatal. Now imagine, you're living in a world where 90% of headlines scream catastrophe. Your amygdala? It's working overtime, and when it stays overactive for too long, it shuts down another critical part of your brain, the prefrontal cortex. That's the part responsible for logic, decision-making, long-term thinking. So what happens? We panic, we hoard, we doom scroll, we lash out, we isolate, we lose sleep, we lose trust. And it doesn't just hurt our wallets. It seeps into our relationships, our mornings, our moods. You snap at your partner. You feel exhausted even when you do nothing. You carry a strange, quiet emptiness that doesn't go away. And no, that doesn't mean you're weak. It means you're human. You're living through a storm this era was never meant to handle. But hear me, every storm has a way home. And that journey? It doesn't start by controlling the world. It starts by learning how to anchor your own mind and heart. And that journey, I've seen it begin in places you'd never expect. Not in market rebounds, not in political reform, but in ancient ideas, in philosophies that have survived empires, wars, pandemics, and collapse. Let me take you back. Over 2,000 years ago, the Roman Empire was drowning in war, plague, and political chaos, and at the center of it all stood an emperor, clad in armor, crowned with gold, but inside, he was just a man. Fragile, worn, human. His name was Marcus Aurelius. You know what moves me most about Marcus? Not that he ruled a vast empire, but that, in the middle of so much noise and bloodshed, he didn't let power harden him. He didn't become numb. Instead, he wrote, not speeches, not decrees, but quiet journal entries, just for himself. A book we now call Meditations. One line from that book still echoes in me. You may not control what happens, but you can always control how you respond. It sounds simple, but that one truth? It has saved more souls than any economic forecast ever could. I remember a patient, her name was Linda. Mid-40s, single, worked in finance. When the markets crashed, so did she. Not because she lost everything, but because she felt completely helpless. Trapped inside a system she thought she understood. She sat in my office, shaking her head, saying, I did everything right, doc. I saved, I invested, I didn't splurge, and now it feels like I'm the one being punished. She blamed the economy. She blamed politics. She blamed society. But one day, during a session, I placed my hand over my heart and gently asked her, Linda, if nothing out there changes, what inside you would have to? That question cracked something open. Just a sliver. Just enough for light to come through. Marcus Aurelius lived through constant war. He knew he couldn't stop invasions. He couldn't control the rebellions in distant provinces. But he chose something no one could take from him. Inner calm. He wrote, it's not events that disturb us, but how we interpret them. Modern psychology has a name for that, too. It's called cognitive reframing. It's a core part of cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT. A practice where people learn to see their negative thoughts from new angles. Not to sugarcoat reality, but to stop drowning in catastrophes they've imagined. Let me give you an example. News says, markets are collapsing. Old response, I'm going to lose everything. None of this was worth it. New response, this is a volatile period. I can't control the market, but I can control my actions. Hold on to cash, cut spending, build new skills. One new thought doesn't change the situation, but it changes how you walk through it. Linda started practicing this every day. She wrote down 3 things she could control, and 3 she had to let go. Slowly, I heard strength returning in her voice. Not the voice of a woman counting losses, but the voice of someone rebuilding something far more important: her sense of self. Let me ask you something. Have you ever taken 5 minutes? Just 5. To sit quietly with yourself and ask, what's one thing I can do today? Even just a little better than yesterday? If not, try it. Because as Marcus once wrote, calm is not a gift from the gods. It is a skill, trained breath by breath, action by action, choice by choice. I know, you might be watching this while feeling far from calm. Maybe you're anxious, overwhelmed, exhausted from carrying too much for too long. I'm not asking you to become a monk overnight. I'm not saying you need to be a philosopher by morning. But I do want you to remember something. You get to choose how you exist in this world. You can be a victim of chaos, or you can be someone who learns to navigate it by building steadiness from the inside out. And sometimes, a small shift in perspective is enough to turn your entire inner world around. When I talk about Marcus Aurelius, people sometimes say, yeah, but he was an emperor. He had power, money, an army. How can that possibly relate to us? I smile, and I tell them this. Marcus lost a child to illness. He was betrayed by his closest friend. And in his private writings, he once penned the words, I'm tired. I don't want to get up today. You see, even the emperor of Rome had mornings where he couldn't face the world. Just like you, just like me. And that's why I believe, if he could find peace in the middle of war and loss, then maybe, just maybe, you can too. In this age of noise and collapse, I once sat across from a man who had lost everything. His wife had left. His business had collapsed. His bank account showed a few $100s. No home, no plan, no reason to get out of bed. His name was Mark, 46 years old, used to run a small retail chain, 18 employees. Then the crisis hit. Rent doubled. Shipping costs spiraled. Supply from Asia was cut off by new tariffs. Mark tried to hold on. He took out loans, sold his car, mortgaged the house. But in the end, he lost it all. The day he came to see me, he didn't cry. He just sat there, hands on his knees, eyes empty, like he'd just woken up in a foreign world. He whispered, I don't know who I am anymore. I have nothing left to hold on to. And that's the hardest part. I'm still alive, but I don't know why. There are some kinds of pain that don't scream. They don't come with fireworks or tragedy. They just quietly erode the dignity of someone who once believed they were okay. I didn't offer Mark any tools that first day. We just sat, in silence. Now and then, he would sigh, and I would say, you don't have to be strong right now. But you can choose not to judge yourself for feeling weak. During our third session, Mark said something that made the whole room go still. He looked down and whispered, I used to think I was a good person, until I had nothing left to give. Does that sound familiar? We often define ourselves by the roles we play: CEO, father, mother, employee, caretaker, the things we create, money, success, achievements, the people who depend on us, our partners, our kids, our colleagues. But when those things fall away, we panic. We ask, if I have nothing left, then what am I? Buddhism calls that illusion ego attachment, the clinging to a fixed identity. Thich Nhat Hanh once wrote, you are not the job you do. You are not the mistakes you made. You are not the balance in your bank account. I gave Mark a simple practice. Walking meditation, not the kind where you sit cross-legged under a tree. Just this. Walk slowly. Feel the ground beneath your feet. And with each step, silently say, I'm walking through pain, but I'm still walking. By week 4, Mark came back wearing the same old sweater. But something in his eyes had changed. He told me, I walk every morning, 30 minutes. I don't have a home, but I have feet. I don't have wealth, but I have breath. I don't have a plan, but I have presence. I smiled. This wasn't toxic positivity. This was a man learning to live again. Starting from the inside, I introduced him to a deeper teaching from Buddhism, one that has changed how many people, including myself, see suffering, impermanence. Everything changes. Nothing lasts forever, not even this pain. That's not denial. That's the key to releasing despair. Mark began journaling, not to vent, but to reflect. Each night he wrote, today, I didn't blame myself. Checkmark. Today, I smiled at a stranger. Checkmark. Today, I didn't run away from the pain. Checkmark. By month 3, he found a new job, not glamorous, just warehouse work. But he told me, I don't work to prove myself anymore. I work because I want to live more kindly with myself. You see, sometimes, losing everything is how the universe clears the false layers of our lives, so we can rebuild something real. Mark didn't get rich again. He didn't launch a comeback. No movie-worthy twist. But he was happier than he'd ever been. Because for the first time, he knew what mattered. A calm mind, a grateful heart, and a life that no longer needed to be proven to anyone. My friend, if you're feeling lost right now, financially, emotionally, or maybe you've just lost faith in the world, please remember this. Maybe you're not at the end. Maybe you're at the beginning of a journey no one ever taught you to walk. The journey back to yourself. In the next part of this story, I'll share the practical tools I've seen work in real life. Not theories, not empty promises, but small, grounded steps you can take, even in a collapsing economy, even when the world outside feels upside down. Because healing? It doesn't begin when the world gets better. It begins the moment you say, I may not be okay, but I'm still here, and I'm willing to begin. When the economy crashes, people usually think of cutting costs, investing more safely, finding another source of income. All of that matters, but you know what gets overlooked most? The psychology of the person making those decisions. I once worked with a retail investor. Not a millionaire, just a regular guy trying to do the right thing. After the market dropped, he nearly lost his mind. Not from losing too much money, but from the way his body reacted. Every time he opened a finance app, his chest tightened, his hands trembled, his throat dried up like he was suffocating. He told me, I can't tell the difference anymore between rational thought and pure panic. What he needed wasn't just financial literacy. He needed emotional regulation, mental clarity, inner ground. So, where do we begin? In therapy, I often guide people through a model I call the 4 pillars of inner steadiness. These are the 4 foundations that keep us upright, even when the world is shaking. 1. The body. When your body is calm, your mind can follow. It sounds simple, but most people ignore this. In crisis, your brain floods with cortisol, the stress hormone. If it builds up too long, it leads to anxiety, insomnia, mild or major depression, impaired decision-making. So my first rule is this. Don't make major life decisions when your body is depleted. Start small. Drink water. Dehydration mimics panic. Sleep. Lack of sleep distorts reality. Walk 20 minutes daily. It lowers cortisol naturally. Eat slower. Chew with awareness. Taste your food. These aren't lifestyle tips. They're medicine for your nervous system. 2. Emotions. From reaction to reflection. In therapy, I often say, emotions aren't the enemy. The problem is when we don't notice them soon enough to stop being swept away. When someone is panicking over money loss, they're more likely to make impulsive decisions, assign blame, act out, punish themselves. So what's the solution? Name the emotion the moment it arises. It sounds too simple, but this is one of the most effective tools in therapy. We call it, name it to tame it. The moment you give your emotion a name, you create space between you and it. You're no longer fear itself. You're a human observing fear. For example, instead of, I feel overwhelmed, right pointing arrow try. I'm scared of losing control. Instead of, I'm angry at the market, right pointing arrow try. I'm afraid I'll look like a failure. Instead of, I'm tired, right pointing arrow try. I'm grieving a dream that didn't come true. I once guided a businessman who felt panic every morning. I told him, stand in front of the mirror, look yourself in the eyes, and say, I feel scared, but I'm still here. I can breathe. I still have a choice. He later told me, just doing that was enough to stop him from spiraling into self-destruction. 3. Meaning, reconnecting to your deepest why. A patient once asked me, if the world's always this chaotic, then what's the point of being a good person? It's a dangerous question if left unanswered. It can quietly pull people into cynicism, fatigue, numbness. In therapy, we don't silence that question. We go deeper. We ask, why did you start doing what you do? Who is someone you don't want to disappoint? What moment made you feel your life had meaning? Because when someone reconnects with their core values, they become 10 times more resilient to what's happening outside. There's a technique for this. It's called value clarification. It means identifying what truly matters, especially when everything else is shaking. I once saw a woman climb out of a deep financial depression. Not because her bank account changed, but because she remembered she wanted to be a role model for her child. She wrote this on a piece of paper. I don't know if I'll succeed or fail, but I will teach my child that no matter how hard it gets, their mother chose integrity. That no matter how chaotic the world becomes, their mother never gave up on kindness. She kept that note on her desk. And every time anxiety came back, she read it, and somehow, her mind grew stronger. Little by little, day by day. 4. Connection. Because healing never happens alone. I once told a widowed man, pain doesn't need you to conquer it alone. It just needs you to share it with someone safe enough to truly hear it. But in crisis, most people isolate. And I get it. Shame, fear of seeming weak, or that voice inside that says, my problems are small compared to others. But you know what? Isolation is poison. It slowly kills your ability to recover. Sometimes, all it takes is one call, one coffee, one honest message. That's enough to reactivate the part of your brain wired for connection. That's enough to remind you, you're not crazy, you're not broken, you're not alone. I once met 4 friends. They had all lost their jobs in the same month. Instead of disappearing into silence, they started calling each other every morning at 7 a.m. You up? Did you stretch? You sending out a resume today? None of them got rich, but none of them spiraled into depression. Why? Because they had each other. And that, my friend, those 4 pillars, the body, the emotions, the meaning, the connection, they're not fancy. They're not complicated. But if you build each one, brick by brick, you'll stand steady, even when the economy doesn't. I once had a patient, an entrepreneur, 52 years old. He sat across from me and said, Doc, I've lived most of my life, and I don't think I've ever felt truly at peace. I asked, how would you define peace? He thought for a moment, then said, peace is waking up without the weight, not having to brace every morning, wondering if today I'll fall behind again. That sentence? It echoed like a mirror, reflecting this entire modern world. A world where the mind is always chasing forward, and never allowed to rest in the now. We don't live to live anymore. We live to chase, to catch something, often vague, always out of reach. But when the market crashes, the job disappears, the future falls apart, we finally stop, and we look around, and we ask, what was I chasing this whole time? In that moment, if you truly listen, you'll hear something ancient, whispering through the cracks. Let's start with Buddhism. Its first truth? Suffering is real. Sounds bleak? It's not. It's not a complaint. It's an awakening. The Buddha never told us to run from pain. He taught us to look straight into it, to understand it, and once we do, we stop fearing it. Buddhism teaches that suffering arises from 3 roots: attachment, aversion, ignorance. The first one, attachment, is everywhere in modern life. We're taught to crave, to accumulate, to consume. Social media tells you, you're not enough unless you buy this. The system tells you, work harder, prove more, then you'll be safe. But Buddha said, it's not because you have little that you suffer. It's because you want so much and never feel like it's enough. I once spoke to a man who lost everything in the 2008 housing crash. He told me, when I was rich, I never felt peace. But when I lost it all, I finally began to see, real happiness doesn't depend on things that can be taken away. Can you hear that? That's not a theory. That's a truth. Only someone who's been to the bottom can truly understand. Now let's talk about Lao Tzu, the ancient sage behind Taoism. In his timeless book, the Tao Te Ching, he doesn't urge us to fight the current. He invites us to flow with it. He writes, be like water. Water is soft, but it wears down stone. It doesn't force. That's why it never breaks. It sounds gentle, but it may be the most powerful principle you can apply in an unstable world. Imagine this. You lose your job. The market is unpredictable. Your plans fall apart. You have 2 choices. 1. Resist. Clench your fists. Panic. Fight reality. 2. Pause. Step back. Observe the current. Adjust your course. Lao Tzu teaches, what is rigid breaks easily. What is soft endures. One of my clients, a former executive, got demoted during an economic downturn. At first, he fought it. He blamed the system. He resisted. He spiraled. But over time, he began practicing Taoist philosophy. He told me, I realized some rivers flowed too strong to swim against. So instead of resisting, I learned to float, not aimless, but aware. He took a lower-paying job. Less stress, less status, but more time for his kids. More time for himself. More time for the trees, the walks, the stillness. He said, I've never lived more truly than I do now. Lao Tzu calls this Wu Wei, non-forcing. It doesn't mean doing nothing. It means letting go of control, so things can unfold in their natural rhythm. Up next, we'll return to the heart. Stories of real people who found healing not from wealth or success, but from stillness, kindness, and the courage to feel. These are not headlines. They're not statistics. They're quiet rebirths, and I can't wait to share them with you. I once met a man named Robert. He was 51, worked as a technician at an electronics assembly plant. Quiet, reliable, never flashy. Nobody celebrated him. Nobody thanked him. He came home every night to his wife, tended to a small vegetable garden behind their house. And then, one day, the factory closed. Tariffs went up. Supply chains snapped. The company let go of 70% of its workers. Robert was one of them. At first, he didn't react. He just froze. His wife later told me. There were mornings he'd sit on the porch for 2 hours. No phone, no coffee, no newspaper. Just sitting, like he'd landed here from another planet. I first met Robert at a free community therapy group. He didn't speak, just sat in the back. But on the third week, I read a quote from Thich Nhat Hanh. Peace doesn't mean no noise or pain. Peace means being present through it, without losing yourself. Robert looked up. His eyes were red. And for the first time, he spoke. He said, I think I lost myself. From that day forward, Robert didn't try to bounce back. He didn't rush to apply for jobs. Didn't force himself to be productive. Instead, he chose to live slowly, almost as if he was learning to live for the very first time. He started writing things down, just small observations. Today, I picked 3 wilted leaves from the garden. Today, I watched the rain for 15 minutes without touching my phone. Today, I washed the dishes without listening to a podcast. He called it tiny awakenings. No one told him to do it. But sometimes, when you've fallen all the way down, you finally begin to notice the ground. After 3 months, Robert started volunteering at a local food bank. At first, he just moved bags of rice, stacked cans. Then gradually, he became the quiet center of the group. He didn't talk much, but whenever someone was struggling, they'd sit next to him. And somehow, just being near Robert made them feel calm. A college student once asked him, Do you have a secret? How are you always so grounded? Robert smiled, gently, and said, I used to think I was just rubble. Until one day, I realized, even broken bricks can become the foundation for something new. I once worked with a woman named Lynn, Vietnamese, immigrant, living in Texas. She worked at a nail salon and was the backbone of her entire family. Then the pandemic hit. The salon shut down for 8 months. Her husband lost his job. The kids were stuck learning online from home. Rent piled up. Credit card debt closed in. She called me one night, past midnight. She was crying, not because she feared being poor, but because she was terrified. I'm not sure I'm strong enough to keep being the pillar for everyone else. I didn't tell her to stay positive. I didn't say, you'll be okay. I just asked one question. Lynn, if you could love yourself the way you love your children, what would you say to yourself right now? She went silent. Then slowly, through tears, she said, I think I'd say, it's okay. You made it this far. That's already something incredible. After that night, Lynn started writing those words on sticky notes. She placed them everywhere. On the bathroom mirror, on the fridge, on the car dashboard, inside her wallet. Each note whispered something like, it's okay. You've made it this far. That already means something. Or, you're not perfect, but you didn't give up. Or even, you don't have to be strong all the time, but you're still moving forward. And little by little, she stopped crying in the dark. She started going for morning walks. She baked bread and sold it online. She picked up her guitar again. The one she hadn't touched in 15 years. When the salon reopened, Lynn didn't go back full-time. She worked part days, and spent the other half on what made her feel alive. Not just useful, but human. She once told me, "You know what helped me heal? Not advice, not solutions, but the fact that you listened long enough for me to realize I was never broken. I was just tired." My friend, I don't share these stories to inspire you in a shallow way. Not with some, "You can do it too" slogan. I share them so you remember. Healing isn't a destination. It's not a breakthrough moment. It's not a cinematic comeback. It's made of the smallest steps. The very human, very quiet ones you take when no one's watching. No one taught Robert to watch the rain. No one told Lynn to write love notes to herself. But somehow, they found their way back. Through gentleness, through slowing down, through the courage to feel what's real. And now, maybe it's your turn. From everything I've witnessed, through hundreds of stories, tears, and quiet triumphs, I've come to believe there are simple things, tiny things, that can help keep your soul from collapsing, even when the world around you is. So here they are, 10 things you can start today. No money required, just intention. 1. Start your mornings with one simple, positive ritual. No matter how chaotic the world is, have one thing that never changes. A warm glass of water and a few deep breaths. Write down 3 things you're grateful for. Walk outside for 5 minutes, without your phone. Read one line of wisdom from a book, a prayer, or Marcus Aurelius. That first act of the day? It sets the tone for everything that follows. 2. Limit panic consumption. If your mind feels flooded by news, markets, or endless doom scrolling, cap your news time at 30 minutes. Once a day. Turn off finance app notifications. Unfollow people who fuel anxiety, no matter how accurate they are. Your mind doesn't need more data. It needs more stillness. 3. Learn to move through emotions rather than escape them. Next time you feel anxious, don't act immediately. Sit down. Place your hand over your chest. Breathe deep. Ask, what am I feeling? What am I afraid of? Where is this fear coming from? Have I ever survived something like this before? Write it down. You don't need answers. You just need honesty. 4. Simplify your life, not because you're poor, but because you want to be free. Ask not, what can I buy? Ask instead, what can I let go of, so I can have more peace? Cancel subscriptions. Cook more meals. Reuse what you already have. Give, share, declutter. Peace doesn't come from having more. It comes from needing less. 5. Find your gatekeeper. Choose one person. Just one. Someone you can text or call. Whenever you feel your mind slipping. They don't need to fix you. They just need to listen, without judgment. And if you don't have that person yet, start by writing letters. To yourself. Because sometimes, you are your first gatekeeper. 6. Create an emotional emergency kit. Just like you'd prepare for a financial crisis. Prepare for a mental one. Gather a playlist that calms your nervous system. A journal with quotes that bring you back to yourself. A video or speech that once helped you breathe again. A physical space, balcony, park bench, corner of your room, where you can reset. Keep it ready, so when the storm hits, you won't need to search. You'll just open the kit. 7. Do one kind act every week, without expecting anything back. You can't control the world, but you can always plant a seed of goodness. Thank the cashier. Let someone merge in traffic. Write a handwritten note. Smile at a stranger. When you have nothing else to give, kindness is still yours. 8. Write down your core values and read them every day. Choose 3 values you want to live by, no matter how wild the world becomes. Examples: integrity, gratitude, compassion, courage, stillness, curiosity. Post them somewhere you'll see often. In moments of chaos, look at them and say, I may have lost a lot, but I haven't lost this. 9. Practice letting go, with one small act a day. Letting go isn't loss. It's clearing space for what matters most. Try donating one item you don't need. Turning off your phone 30 minutes earlier. Skipping negative comment sections. Refusing to compare yourself today to anyone else. Each release is a return to peace. 10. Write your personal survival manifesto. I ask many of my clients to do this. A short paragraph, written by hand, posted somewhere visible. It can sound like this. No matter what happens in the world, I choose to stay clear. I will not act out of panic. I will not let fear control my voice. I will breathe. I will observe. And I will act from clarity. I may not be rich, but I will live with strength, kindness, and truth. Write your own. Read it once a day. Not to chant it, but to remember the kind of human you've chosen to be. When everything else feels lost, you've come this far. From economic panic, to ancient wisdom, to real stories of healing. And now you know, peace is not a destination. It's a daily decision. It's how you meet your life. Not with force, not with fear, but with a steady breath, a soft gaze, and one quiet, courageous step at a time.